The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, Conda, power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast. This is a weekly show dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host Macca 19 and joining me as always is Fishing Rico 4.
How you going?
Good. And for her long-awaited return on the podcast, we are talking with Portia.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Great to have you back on.
Yeah, it's good to be back on. Although I don't like the fact that you're making me do a lot of work to do it. I have to earn it, do I?
That's it. We've done a lot of work for this one, so hopefully it's a good one. We're going to be talking about sort of list structure and list management, how we can improve our list over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and get it to looking like a Premiership winning squad. But first and foremost, Portia, I want to hear about your thoughts on our draft strategy this year, because we had a bit of an argument on draft night, and I want to hear your thoughts on why we drafted the way we did.
Look, if you want my most cynical opinion, I would say the reason we drafted the way we did is because we lost Alan Richardson shortly before the draft, and I think that the indulgence of the recruiting team was fully allowed. I can't see any real clear sense in the way we've recruited, especially if we've recruited the way that we've publicly said we have. A lot of small defenders, that's an okay thing, and we're a bit weak at small defence, but in reality, I mean, that's the sort of player you can probably trade in with a second round pick rather than actually use one to draft one that's completely untried. I'm not really sure what the goal was with that. I wouldn't have thought it was an urgent need for us. I would have thought that making sure we had a bit of small forward depth behind someone like Hitchcock and Gray, who are two of our most continually injury-prone players at the moment. Of course, Monfries has got a pretty good injury record himself, and he had a good year this year, but, I think that we're running a bit shallow there. Maybe he can go forward, maybe Amon can go forward, I'm not sure. But I guess the other concern I'd have is about height, obviously excluding Harvey. I'm not sure really what we're trying to do there. It seems like we are building as if it was 2007. I'm not sure what's going on there, quite honestly. I don't think we needed that sort of player set incoming, and I don't think it really matches the outgoing, guys like Brett Ebert. I'm not saying we want to get a small marking forward, but I don't know that we needed to add another halfback to the list instead, especially when we only got Stevenson and Heath last year as well. As for the rookies, again, I think that in a weak draft, I don't know why you would put I suppose an under-height player on the rookie list as a development player, because that's really doesn't seem like it's going to pay off long term. You do that with Ruckman typically, I would have thought, and I suppose next year we might well do that, given it's supposed to be a good draft year for big players. But for this year, I'm just not really sure what we're aiming at with guys like Sam Gray. But overall, I was pretty happy with the drafting of Harvey. I have to say that of the key position forwards that were going to go in this draft, I actually didn't mind him too much. I know that his endurance has been given a huge knock, but that, in a way, I think that's actually almost a good thing, because it means that all he really needs to do is work really hard. He doesn't have a flaw in his talent. He doesn't have some sort of attitude problem, probably. He just needs to work hard. He's a South Australian kid. He's going to get pressure from everywhere that'll keep him online. And I'm just reminded of Dean Cox. He's the classic example of a guy that was drafted on the rookie list in his case with a complete lack of endurance. They thought he had none. And, over time, with hard work, he became basically the most enduring ruckman in the game, able to run everywhere all the time. But because he never challenged himself to do it before, it wasn't really required, and so he didn't do it. And I'm sort of hoping that Harvey might be in that same category of guys that have got a huge tank, but they've never really had to use it, so they never tried to develop it. That's a hope. That's not really based on anything. But I suppose the other upside is that from cult status potential, having a big ranger full forward would be pretty fantastic.
Absolutely.
Rangers.
Big red.
Yeah, but that's all I've got. Any thoughts from you guys? Or
I've grown to like our draft strategy this year. I've seen a bit of a correlation between what we're going to talk about in a moment and how we've drafted this year. Rick, What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was trying to lead you to rebutting because I wanted to hear the argument between you and Portia. But yeah, I didn't mind it either, Macca. I thought a big need for us is a small defender, even more so than a small forward, and after the McCarthy was drafted by who was it? Was it Freo? No, they took Apeness, didn't they? GWS, that's right, the shock one there. There wasn't really much left with the tall forwards anyway in that first round pick, and I know Portia, you're going to disagree with me, but I think our midfield depth is starting to become really strong now, and I was happy to roll the dice. I mean, Impey was a bit of a shock, but let's back him in and let's see what he can do. Some of his highlights were great, and he might be able to convert from that small defender to a midfielder and push up the ground anyway.
Well, I guess from my perspective, obviously as soon as he's on the list, I want him to succeed. And I guess we could always be looking at the potential that, as I said, based on what they've actually said in the media, the Port administrators, maybe it's not a great choice. But, if it's on the basis that, say, someone like Burne-Jones might become a eventual replacement tagger for Cassisi or Corns, arguably Impey with his build could do that as well. So that's a possibility. And I suppose in that light, I'd probably review it a bit more kindly than I have.
I think the good thing is that the players that we drafted, especially the smalls, can all play in multiple positions. I think that's something that we really looked at doing, and especially with the pace of the players that we did pick up. As you said, I mean, there's quite a lot of potential there to become a tagger or, a switching forward defender. Probably a couple of centimetres too short, a couple of them, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
The only one I'm not 100% sure on is the Sam Gray pick. I really like Sam Gray, but I don't know, it just sort of screams a bit of sort of Ben Holland's Jackson Crabb sort of thing to me.
Totally agree.
I think that Jones looks exciting. I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, look, I guess that at the end of the day, this is not as bad a draft as 2010, so I'm pretty happy with it.
And I think the criticism with Harvey is that he's a lead kick type player, and does he have the work ethic to push the boundaries and running further up the ground more often? But like you pointed out, he's still young and he can build his endurance and he can learn that, can't he?
Yeah, that's the one thing you can really. That's if you got Burgess, that should almost be what we were trying to recruit, because he can fix the rest.
Well, and not even Burgess, but he's got Jay Schultz. I mean, really, the club should be getting Schultz to mentor him bang straight away.
Schultz was pretty athletic though as a junior.
Was he?
Yeah.
But he should be able to impart that onto Harvey, though, in relation to work ethic and what he has to do as a forward.
Taking knocks to the back of the head and not getting free kicks. I mean, that's a pretty useful lesson for a Port Adelaide forward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, what about Treadway? He got every free kick going around, didn't he?
I know. Oh, no, you're quite right. I forgot.
Well, let's get into it. The reason why we're doing this podcast is to talk about list structure, what we need to do to improve our squad to make it into a Premiership winning squad. That's the whole reason why the players play footy and why we watch it. It's been 10 seasons now since our last flag. To be honest, I'm not too happy about that. I want to taste that success again. So what we thought we'd do is review our list structure, compare it to Premiership squads over the last 20 years and see what we need to do to get it up to that Premiership level list-wise. So what we've done is chosen 4 AFL Premiership squads. What we'll be doing is comparing our current list to North Melbourne 1996, Sydney 2005, Geelong 2007 and Hawthorns 2008, as well as the Port Adelaide SANFL Premiership winning squad of 1988 as well. Now, the reason why we've chosen these sides is that they've all made at least 3 grand finals and won 2 of them in their Premiership window. We've specifically not chosen Brisbane because we think that they've had a little bit of an unfair advantage in how their list came together in terms of the Fitzroy thing. So this is all about drafting, and we think this is going to show us what we really need to do to improve our squad to get it up to that level.
We got the power to win, power to roll, come on, Port Adelaide aggression, we are the power from Port.
First things first, should we talk about the correlation between the squads? What's a couple of the common links that we've sort of discovered?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, basically, I've sort of broken it down by section a little bit, but there's a few things that are an absolute commonality. First of all, in defence, you will find that regardless of whether the experience is in tall players or small players, all of these dynasty teams have a batch of defenders in the 100 games plus bracket, and that seems to be really important to have that cohesive group of defenders. We've also, interestingly, within defence, the actual quality of key position defenders, which we normally rate as quite important, has been very mixed. It looks like you can have an okay key defender as long as you've got some really good flankers and pockets backing them up. So that's an interesting look for us going forward. Every one of these dynasty sides has got at least 2 mature ruckmen that are 21 years and older. The actual quality of the ruckman doesn't seem to matter. It looks like the most important part is that they can contest. I think probably the biggest exception here would have been North Melbourne's Corey McKernan, who was an absolute star for them. But I think that when you look at that North Melbourne 1996 list in hindsight, it was actually fairly shallow, so they probably needed that extra boost. Key forwards was another interesting one. All of these dynasty sides have had a focal point key forward, which speaks to the quality of the player in a lot of cases, certainly. We're looking at people like Buddy Franklin, Scott Hodges, Wayne Carey, Barry Hall was pretty good, and Cameron Mooney being the 5th person in that list. I suppose the main thing to other consideration as far as forwards is concerned is not only did they have the focal point key forward, but that they had a structure set up that could support a focal point key forward. They had, I suppose, something different to what Port Adelaide do today, where we sort of flood back and then try and run forward all at once. It looks like they actually have some sort of system, probably a lot of midfield clearance as well. Small forwards, there doesn't seem to be any real solid commonality between the squads here, except that you can see that mostly the best of the small forwards that are actually listed are more like goal-kicking midfielders. They're the guys that sort of come on the burst and then kick goals near the 50, I suppose, rather than being the specialist pocket players like guys like, I suppose, Phil Matera, Stephen Milne. There's been a few classic finals disappointments there, and it certainly seems that they're not the guys that end up in these dynasty sides or, I suppose, really contribute to them.
I don't think there's really been a Premiership winning side that's had a small forward as the main focal point, to be honest.
Oh, no, there definitely hasn't been. But whether they're a consistent contributor or not, I suppose, is the other consideration, I suppose. But like you had, did you have a Port Adelaide in 2004? Wasn't it, you had I suppose Pickett, no, not really. He was sort of more defensive, wasn't he? Yeah, we mostly had resting midfielders in the forward line. And that was probably a big bonus. The next category, I suppose, is midfield, which is the obvious one. The most obvious commonality here is that you should aim to have the majority of your midfielders in that 23 to 28 age bracket of prime playing with 100 games of experience, and that's across the board. The first-rate midfielders, you need to have a couple of guys that you could consider to be worthy of winning a Brownlow in any given year, and that's certainly something that's quite hard to recruit, and sometimes you can get lucky, but a lot of the time you can't. The other interesting thing I found was the secondary midfielders can be quite a mixed batch. You always hear about silky skilled midfielders, secondary midfielders, and guys that have got pace to burn and all that sort of thing. But be a dynasty side, it looks like what you really need is 3 things. You need reliability, you need endurance, and you need accountability from these guys. So we're looking at guys like Anthony Rock in North Melbourne. You look at the North Melbourne 1996 side, and they're just all triers, and they're just consistent. They turn up every week and do everything they can and just play with their heart. And it's really interesting to see that, the most important thing is having guys that will present every week. And I think that we've certainly got a good chance there with Hinkley as a motivator and I suppose the quality in our list and the ethics that are being built up in it. The other last interesting thing I think about the midfield is that pure outside midfielders, so we're talking about speedy contest avoiders. If I'm being cynical, I'm going to say your Nathan Loney types. There's not really many of them in these teams. They're the guys that are outside. They're outside because it's better for the team, not because they can't contest. They all can contest. Even guys like, I suppose Andrew Macca. I suppose if he ever gets a run up there, it's every midfielder in these sides, they can get in there if they need to, and that's an interesting thing, I think.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I think the main thing that I want to talk about is the experience of the Premiership winning squads. And we've done a bit of a chart. We'll put some charts and tables up in the podcast thread to have a look at. Pretty much out of the last 20 or I guess 18 years, ever since sort of 96, every Premiership winning team except for the 2 Crows flags has been very, very experienced. Now, I'm not sure why the 2 Crows flags were different. I think they had a lot of injuries in 97 in terms of their actual grand final side itself, because they only had just over 1,500 games worth of experience, which is incredibly low. But the average of between 96 and 2013, the average amount of games in your Premiership winning team is 2,641, which is up there. That's quite a lot. Currently, we're on 2,037, which was our semi-final team. So we really need to find about 600 games worth of experience on average before we've really got a Premiership winning side.
How many seasons is that? That's
2 seasons.
You're looking at 2 or 3 seasons. If you look at the 3 Brisbane flags in 01, 02, 03, theirs went from 2,758 games in 01, 3,100 games in 02, and then 3,450 games in 03.
Right.
So it does grow by about 300 games per year.
Okay.
Which is pretty interesting. But even the so-called youthful Premiership teams, you're looking at sort of maybe West Coast in 06, Hawthorn in 08, and well, that's probably it really. Even they had 2,600 too, and Collingwood in 2010 had 2,200 as well. So
your chart, Macca, shows how amazing the 1988 Port Adelaide side was as well, really.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
And with their experience level so low, you can see how they had such a dynasty for those young players to perform so well on the big stage so early.
Yeah, but look, I mean, there's a lot of young performers on the 1988 side, but I think that obviously the games is probably not what you want to look at there. It's the age, and you can see guys, Boyd, Curtis, Ebert, Abernathy, they're all 25 and up. Stephen Williams, they're Darren Smith's 23, I suppose that's borderline, but Kerr 27, Simpson 28, they're all right up there as far as age. Yeah, and so you got guys that are, they might be, I suppose, SANFL experience, but who knows? They've got the age, I suppose, that level head.
But it's all those younger players in the 1 to 50 bracket, which of followed through in that dynasty, really, didn't they?
They're the ones that made it a dynasty. You're right.
Yeah. Sorry, well, that's where I was sort of heading with that comment. Because it just seemed we've had such a skewer when you look at the different teams in those 20 years. We had such a skew in that 1 to 50 bracket compared to all the other sides.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. Look at that! There it is! It's all over! Port Adelaide! They had the power to win, and it was very much history in the making today.
All right, so we'll go into sort of the sections now. We'll start talking about the key defenders because that's sort of a talking point. A lot of people on our board thought we needed another monster key defender. Looking at it statistically, I'm not sure we actually do. I think we're pretty well set for key defenders. Portia, what do you think about that?
Look, I think that you could make a case for a monster key back because there are going to be, these absolutely huge key forwards coming through. If you could get a guy about 198, you consider it, but we don't need more 193s, 195s. If we're looking at basically, I suppose, an almost a centre-half-back ruck type. I guess an up-heighted Greg Phillips or something like that. And that'd be the only way you'd really look at it. I don't think we need to be drafting guys on spec. I certainly don't think it's a drafting priority. We look at the analysis of the other dynasty sides, and as I said, basically the quality of the key position back line is, it can be variable. You can have some really good players there, or you can have them supported by some fantastic flankers and pockets. So I think that we've got Homsh and Cleary, I suppose, as that second tall. Tringo, look, honestly, I've been so impressed with him. I think we can lock him in as a centre-half back for the next 5 years with no consideration whatsoever. I'd just have him in there straight away.
Yep.
Carlisle, 26, we're sort of saying, acting like he's one of the old guys at the team, and I suppose he is, but he's still as a key position defender. You'd be surprised if he wasn't playing for at least another 4 years. I'd be absolutely stunned if he wasn't. So we've got some really good defensive options going forward, and we've got some okay depth there. I suppose you could add one extra guy if you just wanted to be absolutely certain, but I wouldn't really be rushing to, and I suppose we don't know whether guys like... I suppose someone like Mason Shaw might become a centre-half back rather than a key forward. It all comes down to how they develop, and I suppose what the club decides is more important for them personally. But I think as far as key defenders is concerned, I think we're actually going pretty well.
Yeah, me too. I think when you compare them to the other 5 sides, we do look pretty good. All they need is time, really.
Yep.
Another 2 years, Homsh will probably get another 30 to 40 games in those 2 years. Cleary will start playing games as well. I think we look pretty set. North Melbourne only really had Martin and Fairley as their 2 key defenders on their entire squad.
Yeah.
In 96. They had Paul Geister as well, but he didn't really get many games. Sydney, you're looking at sort of Craig Bolton and LRT. They had Saddington and Shawble, who left at the end of that year as well. They recruited Ted Richards for a replacement. Geelong, they had Harley and Scarlett and Egan as well. A couple of old guys there. So really, I think all we need is time with our defence, and I think they'll start to gel really well in terms of the tolls. I don't really think we need to trade one in. And to be honest, looking at, I know we didn't really do much research on them, but looking at Hawthorns' 2013 Premiership side, they only had one key defender over 190 centimetres in Brian Lake. He was 195, and then they had two guys that were 189 in Stratton and Gibson, and that's it.
Well, look, I mean, I think that it's not one of the teams that we actually assessed for this, but I think that the classic example for me is Port Adelaide's 2004 side, where we had someone like Bishop run up behind the leading forward and then Brett Montgomery cutting him off all the time. Yep. I mean, how many times did he get run down by a leading forward? It was all the time. And so you can cover that, as long as you've got a guy with enough height and I suppose the pace and awareness to keep up, you can cover a lot of guys. But I suppose we've never really had, these absolute giant key forwards that, basically could be ruckman if they wanted to be. I think that's something new that's coming up. Whether they'll actually be up to the ability to, I suppose, perform as a key forward every week is going to be another question. But, it's always going to be a little bit of a struggle. I suppose that the only comparison I can think of is that when, Essendon had Steve Alessio at full forward, that was always a difficult matchup in a lot of ways. But it came down to the flankers to really cut him off.
Well, I think that's the key, really. It's all about team defence. It's not really about one-on-ones. One-on-ones is a very old school thing that might have happened in North Melbourne, 1996. But if you look at the team defence of the other sides we've looked at, and you can really tell that it was their flankers, their back pockets, the flankers really cutting off the leads, and you can tell, especially with Port 04, we had Monty and Bishop. Those guys really cutting off the leads. Chade Corns was a master of that as well. And it's the same story looking at Sydney, looking at Geelong, looking at Hawthorn. It's all about getting players to the contest as opposed to relying on your key defender to really kill the contest.
Yeah, but I guess that's one thing that we're really seeing a lot more now than we did back in a lot of these times is that our key defenders seem to get isolated with a key forward quite often. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if it's structural or if we're just getting caught out. But that's something, definitely.
So we might as well start talking about the general defenders, the small defenders and flankers. And this is something that I've seen or noticed in all of these sides is a lot of pace. A lot of pace, a lot of creativity, a lot of attacking from the defence. And that's why I'm pretty happy with how we've drafted this year. I think we've seen that as a real hole in our side, and we've tried to add pace. And hopefully some of that sort of helping to cut off the leads and all that sort of stuff as well. But if you look at North Adelaide, North Adelaide. Why am I talking about North Adelaide? North Melbourne 96, you're looking at sort of David King, Robert Scott, Blakey and Schwass. They were all very, very quick, very attacking players. You look at Sydney as well, they had Ablett, Kennelly and Barry. Geelong had Macca, Enright, Wojcinski and Milburn, very attacking. You look at Hawthorn as well, I mean Birchall, Hodge, Bateman, Guerra, very, very quick players. And I think that's why we've really chosen to draft it the way that we did this year.
Look, Macca, I'm looking at the same section as you are, but I'm seeing the other names. I'm seeing guys like Nix and Barry and Bevan, they were just really good accountable defenders. I'm looking at all the other really accountable guys in defence that aren't the pacey guys, and I think that, there are pacey guys, but I think it's the other guys that are the bread and butter of the defence, quite honestly,
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. Nix didn't play in a premiership, though.
No, that's true.
Neither did Danny Jacobs, but he was useless. So.
I would never count Danny Jacobs as a footballer worth mentioning. But Brent Guerra certainly fits my category, I would have said. He's a very smart, canny defender that is quite accountable. Yep. You look at the general defenders at Port Adelaide, Paul Northeast, he wasn't the super fast guy, was he?
No.
Fiarchi.
He was surrounded by guys like Fiarchi and Abernathy.
Yeah.
But you think of them streaming out of defence, though, don't you? I mean,
you do.
If you think
any guy can do that.
Oh, well, that's right, and it goes back to your conversation before about having the right structure, and I think, and even though we don't have Hawthorn on the list this year, they had a very fantastic structured defence, which allowed them to play so well, and that's where we've been exposed. And but pace from defence doesn't hurt.
It's not really just about pace; it's more about creativity, knowing when to
leave
your man to go and cut off, knowing when to attack, knowing when to run forward of the play. And that's something that I think if you look at the last maybe 15 or 16 premiership sides, they've all got those very attacking players coming out of defence, knowing when to run, when to defend, when to leave their man, when to be accountable. And that's something that just gets learnt over time. And I think that's something that you do see when you look at these charts, is that it's all about the defence, but it's all about an experienced defence. They're all very, very old, very experienced. They've all played a lot of games together.
But I guess just going back to the guys who were drafted this year, I guess the one of the supposed defenders at this point that I'm actually pretty keen on is Carl Amon. Now, the reason for that is that in the highlights, and unfortunately it's only highlights I'm really going off here, he always seemed to keep the ball moving, and I think that's a hugely important part of defence. I think that any time you see a defence under trouble, it's when some guy's got the ball by himself and he's looking around for an option, he can't find one. I don't think you need pace for that. I think you need that incredible awareness. I'm not saying that Amon's got it, but I'd like to think that there might be a chance he does, and that's why we've gone for him. And I think that, pace is good, but awareness beats it all every time.
Disposal usage is pretty important in modern football out of defence too now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but that's as much structure as anything, isn't it? I mean, these guys can kick, but, the problem is that, and this is going back to the forward lines as well, if you're having to run flat chat to make your kick, you're not going to be kicking well no matter how good a kick you are, The slowest guy in the league and the worst kick in the league can be a fantastic kick if they've got time to settle and take a shot. Because if they're running and they've got someone on their tail, there's no chance at all that they're going to kick well. And that's where structure comes in, blocking for each other, securing possession, all that sort of stuff. So, pace is good, but it's not everything.
I think it's all about experience. I mean, you look at the charts and you look at the 100 games onward, we've got one player in Tom Logan, and that's it. And every other club that we've sort of focused on here is 3, 4, 5, 6 players in that sort of in that bracket. So it's all about playing games together, I think.
Oh, yeah. And if you look at that defence as a group, I suppose you'd say we're 3 or 4 seasons away from being one of these dynasty sides. But on the upside, I suppose, if you look at our squad again, you can see that we've got the players there that you could say are really going to be there. I can't see Jonas trailing off. I can't see O'Shea trailing off. I think that someone like Trengove, as I've said previously, he's an absolute champion. I'm ready to lock him in for, best and fairest a couple of times, probably in the next 5 years. I think that he's going to be absolutely rock solid for us.
Yep.
So we've got the pieces there. I suppose this is another reason why I'm querying the drafting from this year, because the small defenders, they're going to need a heap of experience. How long is it going to take for Impey to get up into that bracket and really contribute to our defence? I don't know. I still feel we could have traded someone in with that pick that we used on Impey. I think we could have maybe looked around on the fringes of other clubs. Surely there must have been someone we could have pushed loose.
Oh, look, I think it's just time. I really liked our defence by the end of the season this year. I thought the unit was starting to play quite cohesively, and I just think they just need a bit of time. And I guess we spoke off air of the follies of Port over 08 and 09, and that's led for an elongated process of us bottoming out. And unfortunately, I just think we need another 1 or 2 seasons with those defenders playing well together. I thought Alapate really developed well this year and showed the growth in his game. And I agree with Trengove. I think it's going to be fantastic. And I'm a big fan of the glove Jonas. So I think we've got the nucleus now with those new boys coming in as well. I can't see a need for us really to sort of panic and cough up any dramatic picks or anything to try and draft in someone, unless there's a massive injury. I mean, I think we're really in trouble if Trengove, heaven forbid, did a knee, and hopefully that never happens, but I think we'd really be exposed if that was to happen.
Yep.
I'm not sure, again, for the reasons we previously mentioned. I think that if you've got a guy chasing up and a guy cutting off, we could cover it, but as you said, he is pretty good, and I suppose he's our biggest defender as well, so that would probably be a bit tricky. We'll find out.
Yeah. But, I mean, how many teams carry on their roster 2 or 3 key defenders at 197 plus centimetres?
Not many.
No.
Not many at all.
Looking at this, only really Hawthorn did it with Zach Dawson as backup. All right, moving on. Let's talk about key forwards.
Okay. Well, look, this is one of my little pet projects that I complain about every year. First of all, I'll get my I told you so out of the way. Back in 2009, I was saying we should go for 3 talls. We should have gone for Butcher, Daniel Taylor and Jake Carlisle, and right now I look like a genius. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, and Butcher has been a bit of a letdown as far as, I suppose, consistency of performance. Now, we're in a situation where we could recover from this. We'd be crossing our fingers and touching wood and any other superstitious thing you can think of, but really, we need Butcher to perform this year. Otherwise, we definitely need to just start flinging out there to get as many key forwards as we possibly can to fill gaps, because Schultz is not going to last a lot longer. Les Toffee's always going to be a 3rd tall. I know I say that a lot, but I just don't think he's a structural player. Shaw, he hasn't played a game. Harvey hasn't played a game. And they're both going to have to do a hell of a lot of work on fitness and so forth to get up to speed still. They're probably 2 years away from, I suppose, even remotely being a consistent contributor. So there's a hell of a lot on Butcher right now, which is a bit rough on him, particularly given the background that he's come from as far as injuries. But look, that's the situation we're in. We've made our situation, and we've just got to go with it for now. But he's got this whole season to really prove he can do it. And if he sort of breaks down, we've really got to go out there and scattershot for some fill-ins. I think we'll probably have to trade in someone to fill a gap.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was... Sorry, Mac. I was going to say it was quite evident if you look at the of all those teams, they had quite an even spread of forwards in their roster in the games played, and whereas we've got, as you rightly point out, Portia, we've got one key forward in the 100-game plus. I agree. I don't think Westhoff you can classify as a true key forward. And then we've got this gap in games played, and then Butcher, and we've been really exposed by his injury. And unfortunately, it's hard to make that up. And so now we've almost got this gap in our roster, and I think we're going to have to push hard, and this is right up your alley, Portia, but I think next year we're going to have to do something at the trade table to try and, if we have another successful year, to try and get as early pick as possible and just try and target a key forward.
Don't agree. I don't think we're going to be able to draft our way out of this one. I think that we sort of have to hang in there, hope that Harvey and Shaw come along. If you look at these other Premiership teams that we've done in this little spread, they usually have one key forward, but then the other guys are just, they're good players. They're not great players. And if we can get Butcher, or one of those guys, Butcher, Shaw or Harvey, to be a pretty good player, and the others are just, they're just solid guys that can fill in, kick a couple of goals, be a lead-up Quinton Lynch type player, that's really all we need from them. I think if we're drafting next year, we'll be drafting an 18-year-old, we're looking at our defence coming online as far as being a dynasty defence in about 3 years. It's going to take at least 3 years for some guy we draft next year to be consistent, I would have thought.
It's really the great void, isn't it?
It is.
Looking at the squad.
We've neglected it for a decade, so what can you say?
Well, that's it. I really think we should have drafted another Toll in 06 when it was a big Tolls draft.
Instead of Paul Stewart.
I think we screwed the pooch there. And I do agree that we did really need to go for 2 Tolls in 09.
Three Tolls in my book, but yeah.
Well, at least 2. That would have been obvious.
Yeah.
That was so obvious. There was the players there. We had the picks. With those players there, it really should have happened. And it has really put us in a bit of a horrid situation now. I mean, we all love Schultze. We all love Westhoff.
Yep.
But behind that, we've got a lot of question marks because there's no guarantees that Harvey's going to make it. There's no guarantees that Shaw's going to make it.
No.
And Butcher, if Butcher has another really bad year this year, he could be delisted straight away.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what happens with Schultz? Say he gets injured for half a season. What do we do then?
Well, statistically, if you go through his record, he's usually only played about 16, 18 games in a season anyway, so you're going to have 6 games without him anyway by the odds.
I think we'll be hoping to play Butcher and Shaw quite a bit this year just to try and fast track their development. I don't think we'll be playing Harvey this year unless he really surprises or we're in a lot of strife and have no other sort of options, I think. But
can I be really cynical?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to give a lot of game time to Shaw to Shaw. I don't think we're going to give any more to Butcher than we really have to. I think we're going to try and mosquito fleet it because it's the shortest term option to get some sort of success, and I think we're going to go down a bad path if we do that.
I hope not. I really hope not. I guess we would have been hoping that Butcher would have been around about 50 games by now.
Yep.
4 years on the list, 50 games sounded about right. Unfortunately, with injury and form, he's only played 20.
Very up and down.
And he's still got a lot of question marks over him. But you look at the other sides. I mean, Longmire didn't play in the 96 side for North, but they had Carey and Roberts. They had Groom, Danilchenko, and Eric Lissenden as well. If you actually look at who they drafted at the end of 96, they picked up Kent Kingsley, Evan Hewitt, Martin Pike, Cameron Mooney, and Anthony Mellington, all key forwards.
They knew it was a weakness, Yeah.
So they went bananas, and they knew what their weakness was, and they got it. They got it spot on.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose the real issue for me, I suppose, is that we don't even have a guy like you look at our Hawthorns side. They had Franklin and Roughhead, sure, but they also had Boyle, who played quite a few games. We don't even have a guy of that calibre. We can say, yep, now if Schultz goes down, we'll put him in and see how it goes. We just have nothing. It's really quite concerning. I guess if we were really desperate, we could try and throw Trengo forward. I know that he's got some form there as a junior. That would be interesting, I suppose, but that'd really be robbing our defence at a time when we really want them to be building a lot of experience together.
What about the one that I keep banging?
Look at Hawthorns as well, and even though they had Franklin and Roughhead and Boyle, they still drafted Bo Dowler with a first-round pick the year after. And then the year after that, they picked Mitch Thorpe as well.
I think they were trying to corner the market, though, a bit like GWS have been trying to do.
Yeah.
What about Redden? Could we maybe cover something with Redden?
Oh, yeah, well, look, Redden and Lobby.
I'm not sure.
Redden and Lobby, honestly, if you're doing that, you're not going to be playing them structurally, are you? Basically, they're going to be part-timers. You'd want to have, if you're going to have them both on the side, you want them both playing 50% in ruck, pretty much. And so you can't have it's hard to have a 50% time centre-half forward, I would have thought. But, yeah, look, I mean, it'd be nice if they could fill that role. I guess if you're throwing Trengo forward, you could try and play Lobby as centre-half back for that period and do the reverse. I suppose put Redden forward when Trengo goes back and Lobby's in the ruck or something like that, but that'd give them a hell of a lot of game time each. And I don't think that we'll necessarily do that. It could be very interesting.
But Loeb seemed to play a lot better with the extra game time, didn't he, this year? So I'm just wondering, do we look at maybe Redden as an option up forward as a 60% forward with maybe 20% in the ruck?
Yeah, look, I suppose we could certainly do that. You know, there's certainly a precedent for that in Brendan Laird. He spent a lot of time up forward in his starting years, and he still learned how to ruck. He took the forward line ruck contest, and there'll certainly, hopefully, be a whole bunch of them coming up for us. If we have a problem with Schultz, at least we can do is try and clog it up and then win it from a clearance. So I suppose that might be one of our emergency situations as well. If Schultz goes down, is just kick it forward, clog it up, and then ruck it out. And see if we can get a clearance goal.
That's one of the other things that if you look at the comparison between the teams, and they all had ruckmen that could go forward and kick a lot of goals. I mean, North had McKernan, Sydney had Jason Boll, Geelong had Brad Ottens, we had David Hines in '88.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they all kicked a lot of goals.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
I guess the main query is that can we become a premiership threat while Schultz and Westhoff are still playing? I mean, that's the big query at the moment.
I think we can, but we need other players to fill some gaps. Like Schultz, it would be really great if we could say to Schultz, look, all you got to do is hang around the goal square and do short leads. And if we can do that, he can get a lot of time out of his body. But if we keep making him run down to the wing and back all the time and get thumped in the head constantly and God knows what else, I think that he's not going to last for long. I think Westhoff's got a frame that he'll last for a very long time. I've got no issue with him being around. I think he's always got that creativity that we've mentioned previously. But as a forward, that's phenomenal to be able to do what he does. If he can keep his consistency up, I don't see why he shouldn't be around for the next 3-4 years comfortably. But we just need that focal point, young guy coming up that can go well. And again, going across the old Premiership teams thing, it doesn't matter how old your key focal point is. You know, we had Franklin at 21, Roughhead 21, and then we had ironically Hall at 28. It doesn't matter; they just need to be talented and they need to have support in a structure that supports them. But it doesn't matter how old they are. So I suppose there is potential for Butcher to really step up. But he's going to have to have an enormous 2014 for that to happen.
Yep.
So Macca, do you agree with Portia? You think it's too late to try and trade a key forward next year, or do you agree with me? Would you still be making it a target?
You mean draft?
Draft, sorry.
Well, it's a tough one because the 2014 draft is meant to be very, very good for key forwards. It's meant to be very tall heavy and a lot of gun key forwards in that draft. So I think it might be an option. I don't think it'll be our first option.
No.
But it could well be for sort of like a second or a third round pick again.
I'd kind of think probably the other way is that we could get a good try from a club that's got a top 5 pick and they're looking at picking a Jack Watts type. They're going to move someone on. And we might be able to pick someone up on the cheap that, is maybe, as I said previously, a good try, but nothing special. Because even if we have one of those guys, that'd really help us out enormously. Have Butcher or Harvey or Shaw be the talent, and then this guy just the plugger up front if Schultz goes down. It works pretty well.
I mean, it's pretty hard to trade a quality key forward from another club, though, isn't it?
Well, that's the other option.
Look at someone like Chris Dawes. I mean, yeah, you can do it. You know, he's okay. He's pretty good. Quinton Lynch, he's changed clubs. There's a whole bunch of guys who've changed clubs.
But would we call them quality key forwards?
I'd call them AFL capable, but I wouldn't say that they're your first choice. But we're not talking about a first choice key forward. I think it is unrealistic to expect a trade for that. But we're sort of still hanging out there hoping that Butcher, Shaw or Harvey will be the guy that we're really looking for. We just need someone to fill a gap until we get that. I suppose you could trade for a guy like I'm talking about and also draft with our first round pick a key forward. That could help us, but that's certainly putting our Premiership aspirations, I suppose, putting it back probably a couple of years, and I don't know if that'll help us or not.
Well, how do you get that's putting us back a couple of years by drafting a key forward compared to, say, a key midfielder?
Because our midfield and defence as a group are probably going to be in prime age in about 3 or 4 years, and it looks like if we're going to do that with key forwards, they won't be. No, it doesn't necessarily matter, but we're sort of putting a lot of hope in the draft in this particular area if we do that.
The key forward becomes more of a priority. It's a glaring gap in our roster, and I think it needs to be identified, and I don't think we can just sit on relying in Harvey and Shaw, but we can always agree to disagree. We disagree all the time, Portia.
Yes, that's
I'd love
true.
for us to be able to find a 23 or 24-year-old key forward that's played 50-odd games to trade in, but I'm just not sure it's going to be achievable.
No, I'm not sure that it is either.
Well, what about Sam Reid? Could he be a target? You know, now they've got Franklin and Tippett.
Yeah.
Is that maybe a
Might get
target?
squeezed out.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll try to tip it back to us. Well, that'd give us ruck depth and it'd give us the key forward we're sort of looking for. It wouldn't be an awful idea. If they took a bit of that salary cap, I'd certainly be interested.
Yep.
But it's Kurt Tippett.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that stick it up everyone's nose, though?
Oh, that'd be great. Especially paying him legitimately. That would be fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. We'll talk about the small forwards, the forward flankers. Portia, your thoughts on the squads and how they looked?
Yeah, look, I think I mentioned previously that across the board it doesn't seem to matter too much. The best guys in any of these lots are usually your goal-kicking half forwards. Pocket players you don't really see too much. You know, dedicated crummers, as much as I quite often go on about, we need a dedicated crummer, it looks like they're really not all that important in the grand scheme of things, but, I still like them. As for ours specifically, look, you're looking at a pretty short list there. What is it? Need, Hitchcock, Gray, Monfries. 3 of those guys have got injury-filled pasts in Hitchcock, Gray and Monfries. And Need has only got 1 year that we can really work it out on. I don't know. I think that we'll see guys maybe like Impey or, God, I don't know, maybe Heath will get another run up forward. But I think that we'll see... I would like to say these guys are all going to be fit and they're all going to perform, but I just don't see that they necessarily will. The odds are that of Hitchcock, Gray and Monfries will lose basically, I suppose, an equivalent of one of them for the season. Yeah, depending on how that actually goes, I'm not sure. Hitchcock, I really think he probably should have been delisted, and I also think we should have recruited in, hopefully a half-forward type. Would have been really nice to get a Dale Garlett and put him on a half-forward flag, but there you go. Would have been nice to rookie him the year before, I suppose. But look, I don't think we've got anything hugely to be concerned about. If we just keep an eye out over the next 2 and 3 years in the draft, we might be able to pick up someone really good that sort of fell to us. That's the sort of best available pick I think we can actually have the luxury to do over the next couple of years. Is just go, oh yep, there's a great small forward, best one in the draft, let's get him, But I'm not really too concerned about what we've got, except for the fact of their durability.
Yeah, you can't disagree with that, really. I mean, Gray, Hitchcock, yeah, they're all injury prone. What can we do? I honestly, I would have almost. I know I've spoken about it with Macca, and it's another bugbear of mine is Garlett, and I would have been almost tempted to have drafted him because I agree. It's pardon.
I would have reckoned him last year, so.
Yeah, and even if you didn't want him, bad luck, and just put him on there. I mean, it's been done before, and you're right. There is concerns, and the possible replacements for those injury-prone players are what have we got? Maybe Amon, untried. Archie hasn't played a game. So you're right. If they go, and I mean, you can't rely on Hitchcock, can you? No. Really? I mean, I can't even remember the last time he's actually run out a full game.
I can't recall the last time he's run out a full lead.
Or a first quarter, let alone a full game.
It's a bit rough, but
it is rough. But yeah,
it's
he's
a rough
just
sport. Yes, he can count himself pretty bloody lucky, I think. And I think the only reason we've kept him is for a little bit of depth and just as another option there.
I'm kind of worried that we kept him because he's a really good bloke. Because everything, he's involved in everything at the club. He seems to be mates with everyone, and I just really hope we're not returning to that era of he's a good bloke, so let's give him another shot.
Yeah. I guess we counted Impey as a small defender, but he can play that sort of small forward role as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
So if he could be a success there, that would be pretty handy.
I certainly think that's probably where he'll debut. If he plays this year, I think he'll probably play forward.
But you are right. If you look at all the other squads, they are very much sort of goal-kicking midfielders. So you're looking at sort of Eamon Buchanan, Ryan O'Keefe, Schneider, Allison, Rioli,
Chapman, Johnson.
Yeah. Even Daryl Borlase, Wayne Marnie. These guys were sort of more midfielders than forwards.
Yeah, and I would love it if we drafted some goal-kicking midfielders, because I think that's a real weakness for us. Is just getting it on the board.
Yeah.
Could Young play that small forward role?
I guess we've got Wingard.
We've got Wingard. That's one.
That's about it.
But he's going to be a prime midfielder pretty soon, I would have thought. So,
Well, I hope that Polek sort of becomes that player as well.
Oh, I don't... Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I can dream the dream. That's okay.
You can dream the dream. That's okay. I'll let you do that.
Well, I guess there's Hartlett as well. I mean, every time I've been going on about this for 12 months, but I'd love to see Hartlett more on a forward flank than in the bloody back pocket when he's resting or injured.
Yeah.
Because at least he's got a big kick and can kick goals. He's proven he can kick goals. He can be a match winner off a forward flank, but we just don't play him there enough.
I guess the thing about being a good long kick is that in today's game you can see him as having a unique zone breaking ability, and that's probably more useful to have that to break through midfield rather than him sitting around half forward waiting for the ball to come to him.
Yeah, but I'd rather him get 12 touches and 2 goals a game than 12 touches in a back pocket. If he's in that sort of mood.
Given how much trouble we have clearing through midfield, I kind of can see a point to keep him in half back and try and get us through there, because that's a bit of a weakness for us in a lot of ways. Is just getting it past the centre square.
Yeah. Well, I think this is probably another issue with just going back to defence for a moment. I think one of the other things that I really liked about our draft strategy this year is that it means that we don't have to play a Hartlett, an Ebert or a Broadbent in the future in a back pocket or off a back flank, because we'll have other players that can actually do that role there specifically, so that these other players can play their more natural role in the midfield.
And really, I don't know that we necessarily had to play them in defence this year, did we? I mean, we chose to, but I don't know that we needed to.
Well, we needed to create that run out of defence, and I think that's why we moved sort of Ebert there early on and then Broadbent later. Yeah,
but that's because we're playing an overloaded defence. That's why they were back. It's not because we don't have defenders. It's because we're playing our midfielders too defensively.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there for this week. We'll make this a two-parter. So next week we'll talk about the midfield, the utilities and the ruck, and work out a time frame of when we're going to win a premiership. Until next week, go the Power.
Can't pot.
Go Power.